I'm Kiyan.
And this is inevitable, that podcast where that would be telling, because this week we watched The Chimes of Big Ben.
Written by Vincent Tilsley.
Directed by Don Chaffee. Or is it Chaffee? I don't know. I guess inevitable is just going to fall into the trap of Dylan doesn't know how to pronounce the director's name again.
And this episode aired on October 6th, 1967. Now, before we really get into anything, speaking of pronunciations, I found out how to pronounce the name of the town. It's Port Marion.
Port Marion.
And
glad you looked that up.
Once you know that, it's pretty dang obvious that that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Yeah, actually.
We were like, what? Port Marion? Like, what? Port Marion? Like, what? No, it's Port Marion.
We probably got a lot of emails, or got an email at least about that. Like, the thing is, we're recording these like 4 weeks in advance, so
yeah, probably will have gotten a lot of emails.
We probably will have also gotten an email about the fact that I got some of the dates for Danger Man wrong. So the original incarnation of the show was actually 1960, not 1953, and then the second incarnation was 64. And apparently, what happened was it got canceled after one season, and then, like, I guess 3 years later or 2.5 years later, they're like, actually, we should bring Danger Man back because now spies are popular in the 2.5 years since the first season of Danger Man aired.
They watch James Bond and they're like, oh shoot, start making this again.
Well, actually, okay, it's funny that you should mention that because apparently Ian Fleming helped make Danger Man. Like, they brought him on specifically to help develop the TV show because he had written the James Bond books and they wanted someone with writer cred who knew about spies, because also Ian Fleming was a spy himself, if you didn't know. He was in MI6, so he helped develop the show, but he eventually left the show and was replaced by Ian Stewart Black. And then that show actually evolved into Danger Man.
Yeah, wow. So where have we heard the name Ian Stewart Black? I feel like we've heard that name on something that we've watched.
Doctor Who. He wrote The War Machines.
Oh, yeah.
And The Savages. And The Macra Terror.
Wow.
So he was the one who kind of fleshed out the format of Danger Man into what it became after replacing Ian Fleming.
Huh, so since he fleshed out that format, he's at least partially responsible for The Prisoner, even if he didn't directly work on it.
Yeah, a little bit. Fleming would go on to create The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the American spy series, and then, of course, the James Bond movies. So, yeah, that's, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's very interesting. I also read that the pilot episode was filmed in Port Marion.
Of Danger Man?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, man.
And, yeah, because there's a quote from the guy who wrote the pilot, and he was like, it was set in Italy, but the production manager set the shoot on location in Port Marion, which looked like Italy, but was much closer. And obviously the location stuck in Patrick McGowan's mind because that's where he shot his television series, The Prisoner, much later.
Yeah, it's crazy to, dive into this stuff and see just how, many of the Prisoner's seeds were planted, way earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the way back to the start of Danger Man in 1960. Very, very interesting. There's a whole, the Danger Man Wikipedia page has a whole section just on transition to The Prisoner and, how John Drake and Prisoner Number 6 are similar and evidence that they might be one and the same.
Yeah, it's actually, it's really crazy to me to think about, during the production of Danger Man, McGowan and, what was his name, Mark, the other guy who was largely responsible for all of this, Mark, whatever his name was, I can't remember his name.
For The Prisoner?
Yeah, for The Prisoner, who also, Mark Stein?
George Mark Stein.
Yeah. It's crazy for me to think that, these ideas were, they're making this, what I understand is, a very traditional by-the-numbers spy show, yet the ideas were percolating for, The Prisoner, which, is very much not that. The Prisoner, pretends, I think, to kind of be what Danger Man was, but it's if it's not already apparent, it's going to become very quickly apparent that it's actually something else entirely.
Oh boy. Well, Danger Man. Okay, so Danger Man is very interesting because it's actually not a typical spy show. I was reading. It actually forsakes a lot of what was popular in spy television and movies at the time. For example, Patrick McGoohan was one of the people who explicitly stated that John Drake was not going to be as promiscuous or as much of a ladies' man as James Bond or the titular character of the Saint. Both popular spy things at the time. Also, John Drake is actually not armed in the original show because they wanted Danger Man to be almost like a family-friendly spy show. So it's actually, interestingly, forsakes a lot of these spy tropes at the time, but is a spy show. So it's very interesting.
I read that Patrick McGoohan's reluctance to depict romance is actually what lost him the role as James Bond.
He turned down the role of James Bond because he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, the one James Bond movie that I've watched, again, I don't remember which one it was. I didn't feel that there was much. There was romance, there was, it depicted romance, but I didn't feel like it was over the top or anything.
Yeah, I mean, if you watched Dr. No, which is the first one, the very first one, there is not actually a lot of romance in that one, except for Sean Connery forcing himself upon Ursula Andress halfway through the movie. But there's it becomes a lot more prevalent from Russia with Love, which is the second Bond movie, and the title, it literally is in the title, From Russia with Love.
Yeah.
So it's not really until From Russia with Love that that aspect of the character gets played up. Even though if you read the books, it's played up right from the very first, from Casino Royale, which is the first book. From the very beginning, he's a lady killer. The books are actually worse about it because more of his shall we say sex scenes in the books can be construed as rape than the ones in the movies.
Oh boy.
So yikes. But there's a little background on Danger Man that I thought would be interesting to throw in there. Also because I had to correct my mistake with the dates last week, since that's kind of an egregious mistake. But also apparently the success of the Avengers is part of the reason why Danger Man came back as well.
Huh. Interesting.
There's apparently, I'm realizing there's enough spy television that we could totally do just a spy podcast if we really wanted to, in the vein of Inevitable. Not saying we will, because I know every time we mention a podcast idea on the show, 3 years later it percolates and becomes a real thing. So I'm not saying we will, but there's the Saint, there's the Avengers, there's Danger Man, there's the James Bond movies, there's Callan. There's a surprisingly large amount of these spy shows from the 20th century that are out, and movies that are out there. And I'm just saying I'm just stating that as a neutral statement, and we can now move swiftly along.
Yeah, so moving, I guess, into production of this.
Oh, and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Forgot that one. Anyway, continue.
Episode. There's an alternate version of this. So actually, let me just preface all this by saying a lot of the production stuff I looked up was from multiple different sites and was very haphazard and all over the place. So that's what this section is going to be, haphazard and all over the place. So
great, yeah. I mean, the little tidbits I have are also haphazard and all over the place. So
anyway, episode 1, there's an alternate version of this episode. A few scenes were cut out, such as one where number 6 figures out the location of the village by using a star chart or something, or he uses some ancient Greek technology.
Yeah, he uses an ancient Greek device that's it's not an astrolabe, but it's similar in idea.
Yeah, another portion that was cut out was the ending credits to this episode that ends. The show always ends, or the final show ends with the bike being constructed and the ending credits. But in this, in the alternate episode 2, the larger wheel of the bike becomes a scene of like outer space, like galaxies and stuff, and the smaller wheel becomes the Earth, and then the space scene like kind of engulfs the Earth, and then you see the word pop on screen. And I found a blog that has screenshots of this, so I'll link that in the show notes. I did a lot of my research for this episode just by reading old blogs that didn't cite their sources, so take all this stuff with a grain of salt. But I'll link all the blogs that I used in the show notes, and I'll probably continue to do that for the rest of the show.
Yeah, I mean, you should cite your sources. I'm also hoping that the mystical magical book of production information that I ordered arrives soon. It was apparently dispatched, so there's your update for me. I did find one of the blogs has like a lengthy description of like a different opening credits as well in the early cut of Chimes of Big Ben, which contains the rejected theme music of Wilfred Josephs, which we mentioned last week on the episode. And apparently, like, there's no music at all while he's driving his car to the office, just thunder. And then just like when he opens the door, there's thunder and the music kicks in. And this blog describes it as a bizarre, almost avant-garde piece of discordant, dizzying music.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone has like uploaded that online. I'll try and see if I can find it.
And also, you mentioned this off recording that the night sky that number 6 uses with his weird Greek device is actually quote borrowed, unquote, but more like shamelessly stolen from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Which that's weird because when did 2001: A Space Odyssey come out? It wasn't out when this came.
68.
Yeah, it wasn't even out when this came out.
Well, so this blog mentions that Kubrick was filming the movie at the same studio that they were filming The Prisoner at the time, which is how they got access to it.
Huh.
So.
Yeah, interesting there. This episode was never intended to be the second episode, which is pretty apparent. There's many references to like, oh, you've acclimated to the village quite nicely, number 2, and references to like how he's been in the village for months. Yet there are later episodes, and this is, I know you were kind of looking into this, Dylan, but you didn't fully because you were wary of spoilers, but I don't think it's a big spoiler to say that we're going to get several episodes from here on out where it's been like days since number 2 has been in the village. Or number six.
Yeah, that was the one thing I did read. The Anorak Zone, who we consulted prolifically on Zenith, has a section on The Prisoner, and they also mentioned that there are 2 to 3 episodes that have references to number 6 being new to the village after this. So
and that makes sense, like, because just sort of pacing wise, it's so odd that like the second episode is him like almost escaping, not really because of what happens at the end, but like it just feels like it escalates very quickly before you learn like what's actually going on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when I read this on the Anorak Zone, I toyed with the idea that maybe some of those other episodes take place within this story, because this story actually takes place over the course of 7 weeks. It's not explicitly obvious, but that's how long the episode takes. Because at the beginning they mentioned that the craft fair is in 7 weeks or in 6 weeks, and then we see the craft fair halfway through the episode. So the first half of this episode takes place over 6 weeks. I don't know if there's anything that makes it like, except for the fact that I think actually like the new number 2's very first line in this episode is like, remember good old times, you know, you've acclimated pretty well. But besides that, like, I wonder if there's anything later on that would preclude the notion that maybe one of those later episodes take place like within this episode, you know?
The only thing I could think of that like makes that not possible is that they would have had to have replaced number 2 and then brought back this number 2, you know? Because every episode has a new number 2.
Does that not... I read that there was a number 2 that, because of filming order, like, has some questionable continuity with his, like, appearance as number 2.
I feel
then
like
that would be the number 2 that appears
would be
in...
a spoiler.
Yeah, I mean... I guess I'll find out.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, though. I just don't think that it's the case that one of the other episodes takes place within this, but maybe we'll have to keep that in mind, I think. Anyway, Nadia, aka number 8, is actually not. She doesn't act in any of the Port Marion scenes. That's actually a body double.
Wow, that's weird.
Again, all of this info is from blogs that don't cite any source whatsoever. So there you go. Oh, there's a cut line in the conversation between number 2 and number 6, and it's potentially more interesting than any line that remained in the conversation. So after the little conversation, the one that ends with 6 going like, "I'd like to be the first man on the moon," the one where they're on the beach type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is better saved for the end when we have already discussed that, but whatever, we're already here. Number 2 says, "Nationalism is a disease, but it breeds its own antibodies. This place has been built from the very worst nationalistic motives, but what has been created? An international community." That was cut from the episode. Very interesting. There.
I'd also completely disagree with the fact that this village was built on nationalism, but anyway. Maybe that's why it was cut.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I think, he doesn't explicitly say, I mean, I get what you're saying, but he doesn't explicitly say it was built on, like, nationalism, because it doesn't seem to be attached to any particular nation, but he said it was based on, like, nationalistic motives, which could potentially mean that, like, it has, its motives aren't nationalistic, but it has the same motivations as nationalism.
Maybe.
And there's a difference between those two things, I think.
Something to ponder as we get deeper into the show, I suppose.
Now, okay, here's another little tidbit. It's like one of those, whoa, make your hair stand on end type things. To me it was. Cobb, the character from the first episode, C-O-B-B, and then this episode's title is also C-O-B-B, the Chimes of Big Ben.
Well, I mean, that would make my hair stand on end, but I don't think there's an episode later whose acronym is Fortingay, so...
what was it? It was Fathering Gay.
Yeah, Fathering Gay.
That's such like a... That's such... I feel like when... Like, Americans... I feel like that's a very stereotypical, like, English name that Americans would come up with, like Reginald, like...
Yeah.
Something like that.
Very stereotypical upper-class, posh Britishman name.
Yeah. So there's a couple blogs out there that I wanted to mention that go kind of a little deeper in the themes than we've done so far. One of them talks about, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Keynesian economics,
Keynesian?
which were apparently a big thing at the time. I kind of know what that is, but barely. I think it's basically just the idea that like if you're in economic hardship, just spend your way out or something like that. I'm not really sure.
Keynesian economics is also very similar to the idea of trickle down economics, but economics are not my specialty, so.
Yeah, I remember reading, when I was reading about this a couple months ago, I remember reading there's like a race/class dynamic to this theory.
Yeah. If I remember my limited knowledge of Keynesian economics, it's the idea behind Keynesian economics is that if you lower taxes on the upper class, they will spend their money more, which will rejuvenate the economy. So basically it's like... if the economy is failing, just allow the upper class to rejuvenate it. Of course, in practice, this does not work as well as you might hope. But
yeah, I don't think it. I mean, didn't they try this in the 80s, the Reagan administration?
Yeah,
and as an excuse to do a lot of other things. Just saying.
Just saying.
It didn't work. As far as I know, upper classes didn't actually invest their money in anything other than like stuff that didn't rejuvenate the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a blog out there that discusses, because apparently that was a popular theory at the time that The Prisoner was coming out. So there's a blog that kind of discusses the events in relation to that. There's also a blog that did a little bit of scholarly research about collectivism and individualism and talks about that in relation to the show. So I'll link that as well. Another little random tidbit, the Port Marion scenes were shot here at the end of September 1966, and the studio work was apparently done in late November 1966. So almost a full year before the show actually came out.
Yeah, I seem to remember when I was looking at production of the show as a whole last week that like a lot of the show was filmed like almost a year before the show even came out, and then it was only the final 2 or 3 production-wise episodes that were filmed like right before the show came out or as the show was coming out.
Yeah, might explain a lot about those last couple episodes, just saying. Anyway, Vincent Tilsley, the writer for this, actually went on later in life to become a psychotherapist.
That's okay. That's very interesting given a connection that I want to draw between this and something else at the end of the episode, but I'm not going to say what it is yet because it's going to spoil the connection I want to make. But that's very interesting. That's very interesting.
How deep does this prisoner rabbit hole go? Like, there's so much like weird stuff both within the show and around the making of it.
Yeah.
Don Chaffee, the director of this, had also directed Danger Man. This show is like just a big Danger Man reunion, honestly.
Basically.
And there's one more thing from the alternate cut. Apparently, there's a cut line that references how number 6 and Father and Gay were at school together. Whether that's like spy school or like just spy normal school.
MI6 school.
Yeah, but that was cut. And that's all I got for behind the scenes stuff. I'll probably try in coming weeks to put all these things in a better order than just like the order I found them in.
Yeah, I'll try do that too. Try construct an actual like narrative to this production section.
Yeah, I think if we can do that, we'll actually be like a good source for how all this stuff was made. Because if all these unsourced things we're finding are all right, and they all have different things, then there's probably nothing, I guess, out there that collates them all together other than the book that you ordered.
Yeah, which may or may not arrive still. I mean, it's scheduled to arrive between the 17th of June and the 7th of July, which I guess is giving away when we record this, but that whole, 3-week period in which it could arrive is a little disconcerting.
Yeah. Anyway. The Chimes of Big Ben opens up with
So the title sequence is different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So you haven't seen...
Like you mentioned it would be last week.
Yeah, so you haven't seen this full sequence before, right?
Until now, no.
Yeah, so I really like this. It's one of my favorite intros, and now we're getting it in full. So every week, the sort of titles, the portion we got last week gives way to this thing where it's like you were introduced to the new number 2, and number 6 goes, who's number 1, and number 2 says that would be telling.
No, he said, it's who's number 1 and you are number 6,
yeah.
And you are telling is the answer to who do you work for.
Yeah, that would be telling. And then we see a zoom in shot of number 6 standing on the beach and just punching the air.
Just doing the Rocky thing, I guess, on the beach. There's a lot more thunder crashes. Also, I noticed the teacup just in this watch through.
Yeah, it's great.
I also noticed that he lives at Buckingham Place apparently, I guess. So that's a little weird. He also drives a Lotus.
Yeah, there's a lot in the intro, and there's actually a lot in this episode we're getting that he was, because again, it's never fully actually stated that he's a spy or was in MI6 or whatever. But there's a lot in this episode that indicates it, and the fact that he lives right next to Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I like the opening sequence, but I still want to hear the avant-garde music that was rejected that this one blog mentioned.
Yeah, so do I. I hope someone.
I just want to know. I just want to know.
Anyway, speaking of chimes, this episode opens with an annoying alarm.
Yeah, well, so we find out that basically every motion in the town is like dictated by this weird omnipotent female voice on the radio who's like, it's time to wake up. And it's like, whoa, it's time to go to bed.
But it's like, if I remember correctly from the later episodes, it's not really like, this isn't really a big thing in the village. Like, there's a curfew for sure, and there's a wake up time.
Yeah.
But like, other than that, I think they're free to do whatever they want.
Probably.
Almost whatever they want. As long as it's within the rules.
It's a very the macra do not exist kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, when in the macra terror where they live their entire society around the chimes that happen every day, and they're like, okay, it's time to go eat lunch. Okay, time to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for some reason, I remember really well from the macra. I don't know why I remember that so well.
Check out Trust Your Doctor, our Doctor Who podcast,
where we talk about Ian Stewart Black's creation.
We skip ahead a little bit, and number 6 is playing chess again, but not with the same guy from last week.
Yeah, no, now it's a general, number 54. So last week it was the Vice Admiral, number 66, and this week it's the General, number 54. I've decided I'm going to start keeping track of all the numbers we see, because I'm curious to know. We've only seen 2-digit and below numbers so far, so I'm curious to see if there's anything to the numerology of the show.
Yeah, it's going to get complicated, but I think it's worth doing to keep track of it all.
Well, guess I'm doing it. Guess we're doing it. I'm roping you into this.
I'll help.
You'll help.
Anyway, another indication that this episode was never meant to be the second is that number 2 has like gotten way better at chess. So some time has passed because he checkmates.
Or number 54 just sucks.
Maybe, yeah. But there's number 6 has like a suspect line here. He goes like ready to resign or something like that.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting because they hear the announcement of the crafts fair, and then number 54 goes, you know what I'll do? And number 6 goes, resign. I'm like, But then the general goes, no, I think I'll make my own chess set for the craft fair.
So we're getting a little bit of number 6's plan here as well. And I really like how this show does this, is that not only is number 6 trying to escape, he's trying to figure out what the village is, why people are brought there, and as well as who number 1 is.
Who is number 1? Who is? This is the first episode. But okay, so this is obviously the first episode where number 6 reveals that he's looking for number 1. But the way that it's introduced makes it seem like he's been doing it for like a couple weeks now, and maybe that's another indication that this wasn't supposed to be the second episode. Because he's just super casual about it to number 8. Later on, he's like, who's number 1?
Yeah, and I seem to remember that in the episodes that chronologically take place between this and the first episode, he's not as clear as to like what he is trying to do. Whereas at this point, it's very clear that he has basically 3 goals: escape, figure out what the heck the village is, and figure out who's in charge.
Yeah. Which he is still assuming is number 1.
Yeah.
We meet the new number 2, actually, right before the chess game, and it's interesting because he's wearing the same scarf that the very first number 2 was wearing, but he's wearing it over the opposite shoulder that the first number 2 did.
Huh. Didn't notice that.
The first number 2 wears it so that he's got the long side on the left, and then it drapes over his right shoulder, and this number 2 has it the opposite way, so he's got a long hang down in front of him on the right side, and it's draped over his left shoulder. So, I don't know if that says anything. We'll be saying that about literally everything we point out. Don't know if that says anything.
Yeah, this number 2 is very much more human than most of the other number 2s in the show are, I think, or at least the ones we've seen so far. I actually don't remember most of the number 2s that we see from here on out. But
I mean, there's 15 of them or something?
Yeah, something like that. But of the 3 we've seen so far, this number 2 is the most human, the most, obviously a sinister guy, but the one you can kind of understand the best. He's fascinated by number 6. it feels like his goal is obviously to tease out why number two. Sorry, God, I knew that this is already becoming a problem. His goal is obviously to tease out why number six resigned, as is the goal of every number two. But like, he almost seems like he's friends with number six, and he's like very intrigued by who number six is.
Yeah, he's a lot more personable than the other number twos, and a lot more hands-on because he like actually goes out into the village to just meet with people like all the time.
Right, and considering the end of the episode, he's the most successful of all the number twos. He almost succeeds.
Almost.
If this was his plan, like, it's very unclear, like, who instigated this plan. Like, was it Nadia? Was it her masters, who she makes reference to at the end?
Yeah, so I actually think we meet Nadia like now, right after this chess match, right? So maybe we should explain who Nadia is.
Well, so first we get this scene, and this is when we meet Nadia as well, because we meet her on camera. We get a scene where like number six is just chilling with number two in the control room. And number two forgets how many lumps of sugar that number six usually has in his tea. So he asks him, and he's like, "Why don't you check your little book?" He's like, "Fine. Would be easier if you just told me, but fine." So he checks, and he finds out that number six doesn't take sugar with his tea.
Mm-hmm.
But then number six proceeds to tease him by dropping like 3 sugar cubes in the tea.
Well, the way he phrases the question I thought was very interesting, given something that happens later, because he goes 1 cube or 2. And then later on in the episode, when he's making breakfast with Nadia asks him 1 egg or 2.
Yeah, kind of an indication that not all is as it seems.
So,
I'm curious, were you suspicious of Nadia?
A little bit, because we had number 9 last week, who was also a woman who tempts number 6 into leaving. So to have another one like for the second week in a row, and number 9 was revealed to be in on the plan in episode 1, even so much so that at least I thought she could be number 1, might still be number 1. And this week, again, to have another like female character come in and tempt number 6 into leaving the village, it was very suspicious to me. I actually, that in a way made me less suspicious of her, because I didn't think they'd be audacious enough to do the same thing 2 weeks in a row. But maybe that's because, again, like, this is not, according to you, not supposed to be the second episode, so maybe it wouldn't have been so audacious if you had it in chronological order.
Yeah, I don't think so. But on the other hand, it is like almost the exact same thing again. And that's the thing with this show is, I think it was Patrick McGoohan who went on record saying like he didn't want to have more than 17 episodes because he felt the show was getting stretched thin. And there are multiple episodes that essentially just redo and reconfigure slightly the plot and dilemma of previous episodes.
Again, though, that's like a kind of almost a classic spy fiction trait, because how many maniacal like supervillains can you face before their plans start to be the same? I made a joke about this last week, but Diamonds Are Forever is really the same plot as Goldfinger. Just substitute diamonds for gold and substitute like Fort Knox for a satellite, and it's the same plot. You have an egomaniacal villain who wants to steal all of some precious material in the world for his own purpose to increase the value of his own collection. Like, it's kind of a classic spy thing that you face the same kind of villain over and over and over again, because villains are unoriginal and they always have the same plan. So the fact that they do the same thing over and over again in The Prisoner might not be that bad, I guess is my point. Or maybe it plays into this like pseudo spy. I'm going to call it pseudo spy fiction that The Prisoner falls into.
Yeah, I think that's a really good term. And I almost think that this show like plays with that idea. Because, well, we mentioned this last week, but the intro sequence is the same one as in this episode every single week, other than the different number 2 every week. So it's like it's almost as if like this show is just like some sort of time loop, or like the same thing happening again and again and again, because every week he resigns, and every week he gets gassed, and every week he wakes up in the village, according to the intro sequence. And I also like, given the discussion between 2 and 6 later on in the episode about like how the village is like a perfect paradigm of like the new world order, I feel like there's some sort of meta commentary going on here, perhaps about like the nature of TV and televised stories themselves. But I don't have anything more to say about that for now, but I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah, I was just also thinking there's like another... James Bond does Thunderball 3 times. Like, they do the plot to Thunderball 3 times. They do it once with Sean Connery as Thunderball, and then they do a very similar plot with a mysterious British secret weapon that gets sunk in the ocean that the villain is trying to dig up by scuba diving in Roger Moore era, and then they do Never Say Never Again, which is just Thunderball again. So like, again, like this whole idea of redoing the same plot multiple times over. I'm curious to see like if the Prisoner actually does like play with it in the way that you were talking about there. Again, I don't know anything about the Prisoner, so I don't know. But this week they definitely... I think this week though is like different enough from last week's plot that I'm okay with it so far.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, but have to see.
Anyway, this is where they see the new number 8 on the little view screen. Not little, it's actually massive.
Yeah, so number 2 calls her the new number 8, even though I don't think we've met the first number 8 so far. So, in terms of chronology, it's just number 8. But
right.
Again, playing with the idea that numbers can be assigned, which makes them even more depersonal than if everybody had a unique number.
She, just like number 2, wakes up in a perfect replica of her room, looks out the window and realizes she's not where she thinks she is.
Number 6 goes to meet number 8, and they have a conversation where number 6 is not doing anything to dissuade number 8 from the fact that he's working with number 2 to find out why number 8 is here.
Yeah, number 8 reveals that she stumbled upon some like super classified, like top secret information, and then was brought here.
Yeah. And that she also resigned, which is important.
Yeah, does she say she resigned?
Yeah, she does.
Huh.
Because okay, that's why she reveals that she found the secret documents, because number 6 is like, why did you resign? And she doesn't tell him at first, but later on when they're having the secret nighttime conversation, she reveals that she resigned because she saw those secret documents. And didn't want anything to do with it, basically. At least that's what I remember from the episode.
That almost seems, again, we don't really get clear indication at the end of this episode, but like that almost seems like what happened with number 6. Because he's about to reveal why he resigned in this episode, which again feels like it escalates very quickly, and I think really makes the case for this, like, don't watch this as the second one. Watch it as like whatever it's supposed to be chronologically, the 5th or 6th one.
Well, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Anyway, there's another announcement in the village, and apparently they're holding a little art show in 6 weeks. And the winner gets 2,000 free work units.
Yeah. And things like vodka, non-alcoholic vodka, cost 18 work units. Which, I was like, non-alcoholic vodka, so you mean like water? Like,
yeah, like what is non-alcoholic vodka? Like, is that a real thing?
I don't know.
How is that even possible?
But like vodka doesn't really have a taste, so... Although, apparently, this is total tangent, but apparently women have more taste receptors on their tongues than men, and...
what?
So, if you're a man, you're more likely to not recognize the difference between like middle shelf vodka and high shelf vodka, because it starts to taste all the same right around mid-tier. But apparently, woman can actually taste like subtle differences in general, not like, in general. Generalization can taste like differences between brands of vodka, which is surprising to me because, I guess I don't have perspective because vodka all tastes the same to me, I guess because I'm a man. So proof that woman might be the biologically superior gender / sex.
Anyway, we learned that number 8's name is Nadia, and she's Estonian.
Number 6 refuses to reveal his name in return.
Yeah, he also refuses to, like, acknowledge Estonia, because he goes, like, oh, you're Russian? She goes, Estonian, and he goes, so Russian. It's like...
Number 6! Number 6 is also refusing to wear his number badge, so that's interesting.
Oh, is he? I didn't notice that.
He didn't wear it in this episode anyway. He didn't, like, outright refuse to. He just didn't wear it in this episode. At least I didn't see him wearing it in this episode.
I think he wears it in other episodes. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure he starts wearing it, though.
He put it on at the end of episode 1, so that's why I was surprised to see he didn't wear it for most of this story, from what I could tell.
Anyway, it cuts forward a long while, and number 6 and number 2 are chilling at the beach. Number
2.
6... Yeah, go ahead.
This is number 2 has this weird little wry comment about how number 6 used to be a woodworker and he should make something for the art show.
Right. I think that's actually in the earlier conversation, but he brings it up again.
Earlier. You're right.
And number six thinks that number 2 is just as much a prisoner as he is. To which number 2 responds that, like, ultimately, doesn't matter who number 1 is, doesn't matter who runs the village, doesn't matter what side they're on. He has an exact line here, but I want to save that for my quotes section because I wrote it down, actually.
Oh. Well, he also has a line where he says, yeah, I mean, I might be as much a prisoner as you, but, like, the difference is I accept it. Like, I know my place here and I know what I can do, and I accept it. Which, in a way, makes him less of a prisoner because he's not confined by what he... I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
That number 6 is, like, making himself more of a prisoner than he already is by... Yeah.
By refusing to comply with the system, yeah.
Or by acknowledging the fact that he's a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
Or instead of, like, embracing it, I guess. Or trying to fight against it. So I guess exactly what you said.
There's a hilarious continuity error that occurs here that I noticed only because the man who creates it is wearing a really garish black and red striped shirt. But as number 2 gets up to leave, this man enters on the right side of the frame. But then when we cut to the wide shot that show, the wide shot, we see this man on the left side of the frame walking towards the right side instead of the other direction. So I was like, whoa, did this man just teleport? What's happening?
Yeah, that's actually, you got it. That's why number 6 resigned, is because he discovered the government was creating secret teleportation technology, and the village is actually a testing ground for it. No.
Well, I guess there's no need to watch the next 15 episodes.
All right, we're done here. This is the last one.
It's been a good run. Season 5 of Inevitable will be covering... Goodbye,
Mrs. Noah.
Goodbye, Mrs. Noah. See you in a week.
No. Anyway, what they're actually looking at is number 8, swimming into deep water.
Just swimming. She was apparently a bronze medalist swimmer.
Yeah. This is one of those things that, like, a lot of movies and TV shows do to make their characters, like, interesting and unique. This it feels more earned because these are all, like, spies and such who went on to work for the governments. But, like, I don't know, I always find it so out of place when like, a movie or TV show or story in general, like, writes into the character's backstory that, like, oh yeah, they were, like, an Olympic medalist, or yeah, they were an expert woodworker in their past, and, like, feels a little more earned here because these are, like, top level, like, expert people. But, like, yeah, I don't know, this feels a little off still.
I mean, it's a shortcut. You know, it's a narrative shortcut to giving you character skills without having to show them using them.
Yeah, especially because when Patrick McGowan slash number 6 goes out into the woods to start making his woodwork art piece, we see him start chopping down the tree, and then it cuts to stock footage of a tree falling.
I was genuinely impressed number 6 cut this tree down with what amounted to a rock taped to the end of a stick.
Yeah, he's created his own set of tools because the village won't give him like anything sharp.
Yeah, because apparently weapons are outlawed.
But I guess making your own weapons isn't.
Well, they are. It is actually, because number 2 comes out and he's like, you know, sharp things are outlawed, like no matter what. And number 6 says, well, I'm sure you can turn a blind surveillance eye the other way.
Huh.
And number 2 goes, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's cool, I guess. I feel like some of the other number 2s wouldn't have done that.
Well, I think it might partially be because number 2 knows... I think he knows what number 6 is doing here because I think he knows the plan.
Yeah, I think he's clued. I think from the very beginning, he absolutely knows what he's doing.
So whether or not that's like him being just a good old buddy to number 6 because he likes number 6, or if it's him doing that out of necessity for the plan to work, you know,
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of both.
Apparently, okay, so number 8 gets attacked by Rover in the middle of the ocean and is brought to the hospital, which is apparently a castle. I don't know if you noticed this, but number 2 was like, let's go to the hospital. This is going back because we kind of jumped ahead with the cutting down the tree thing.
Yeah. That's not, like, I don't think that's rare in Britain. Like, I don't think a British person would see that and have it be out of place because, like, the hospitals that I've seen in the UK are just like, they look like these ancient buildings. And like when you go inside, it's like totally modern. And that's weird for us, but like a lot of buildings in the UK are repurposed from what they originally were. And they didn't they never redesigned the exterior. They only like gutted the interior and remade it. So it looks like these ancient buildings from hundreds of years ago, but you go inside and it's totally modern.
Yeah. Well, they have that kind of historical construction to repurpose like that.
Yeah.
That we don't necessarily have over here in the lesser English speaking country.
But they're basically torturing number 2 or number 8.
Torturing number 2. Whoa.
Well, it's okay. So as punishment, I guess, for what she tried to do, they have her in this room with an electrified floor, and they gave her a bowl of water, and the floor has like it's a set pattern. I forget what it is, but it's
4 seconds on, 4 seconds off.
Yeah, and it takes 3 seconds to run from where she is to the door. So she has to like time it exactly right. And number 2 is like, yeah, she can leave any time. She just has to time it right.
I wonder how they calculated it would take her 3 seconds to get to the door. Like, who sat there like crunching the numbers? Like, okay, if her stride length is 1.7 meters, and some poor sap had to do that math.
Wait, if your stride is like almost 2 meters, damn.
Yeah, I realized that was a big number. Like after I said it, but I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna leave it. There were lava lamps also in the hospital too. I don't know if you noticed that, but whoa.
Yeah, there's lava lamps all over the village because it was like the cool in thing in the 60s.
Yeah, like we mentioned on Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah. Or no, we mentioned that on the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies because those were in the 60s as well.
Oh, you're right. Because the entire console room was just lava lamps.
And why?
Or the Dalek control room was just lava lamps.
Yeah. Anyway, number 6 says that if they let Nadia go, he'll collaborate. And be
Which then he proceeds not to do.
Well, he says he pretends to be a good citizen for a while because this is when he starts making his sculpture and going out in the woods and stuff like that to participate in the art festival.
Yeah, but he specifically decides to make a boat because he talks with number 8 the next evening, and she reveals that she knows where the village is. and they can escape by sailing. So he goes to make the boat, and then after he's already started the boat, she then reveals that they're in Lithuania.
Right. Which
allegedly,
yeah, is that the case given what we know from the end of the episode? I don't know.
I mean, like, it could be like Madagascar. It could be anywhere where if you sail out to sea and go straight, you hit a landmass, which is like a lot of places in the world. Like,
I mean, like
Morocco and Algeria,
but
Madagascar, New Zealand.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much anywhere. Like, I know what you're saying, but like, if you set sail from anywhere in the world and just go straight, completely straight, you're gonna hit land eventually.
All right, obviously, but I mean, like on the time scale that this episode takes place over.
I know what you mean. Yeah, could just be like a random island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
It could totally be that as well. Part of what I think is an indication that it's not actually in Lithuania is that when they're sailing, Nadia doesn't know how far they need to go till they hit the next landmass, which you would presumably think she would know if she knew they were in Lithuania.
Yeah.
Because she asks number 6, like, how much longer, like, how much longer do we have to go? And he's like, oh, it should just be, like, around this corner. And she goes, huh? Like, she doesn't, like, she acts like she doesn't know how long they should be going.
Well, I think that's because number 6 has a watch. You're talking about when they're in their crates, right?
No, I'm talking about when they're in the boat.
Oh. Maybe she just, I don't know. Maybe there could be any number of reasons for that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, so now we get the art expo, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, we get number 6 explaining Big Ben to number 8, and she calls it Big Bill.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get the art festival.
Yeah, then that becomes sort of a nickname that she has for number 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe his name is Bill. Turns out it wasn't Drake all along, it was Bill.
Yeah, it was just some random barber who stumbled across top-level secrets and resigned from his barbering position for fear of spilling them to his customers.
This is my accepted headcanon now. And he does it really dramatically.
Yeah, his office is in like this secret underground bunker.
The secret organization of barbers. Secret organization of barbers is Sob.
Yeah, and that filing cabinet, like that we see in the intro, is like a record of the history of like all barbers in the UK in the last 1,500 years.
Every
a
head
barber
they've ever
surgeon
cut.
from Children of the Stones.
Children of the Stones and the Prisoner, same universe, confirmed.
Hey, look, they never go to Millbury / Avebury in this show. Spoiler, but they don't. And
wow, like that's a spoiler.
So we don't know,
Maybe Millbury / Avery is just another version of the village. And the barber surgeon is the number 6 of that village because he was also a barber.
Whoa. Anyway, the art show. Number 6 walks in, and it turns out that this is all just a big number 2 fan art exhibition.
And he's like, oh shoot, I didn't put number 2 on my abstract art piece.
Well, he did. He hung like a picture up of number 2, didn't he?
I don't know, because I thought one of the judges asked, like, where's number 2? And I thought, and number 6 says something like, does it matter? Or like,
oh, I'm thinking of when he puts the tapestry up as the sale for the sailboat.
Yeah, when he buys the tapestry from number 38.
Yeah, because that's what happens right now. The art critics really like his piece. I guess they're surprised it's the only one that doesn't, like, shamelessly prop number 2.
Well, also maybe number 2's exerting some influence over the council here because he knows that the boat doesn't have a sail.
Right. And he has a line here. They go, the panel asks him, like, so what does it mean? And he goes, what was it? It means
what's
what
it titled? Is. Well, it's also what's it titled? Escape. What does it mean? It means what it is.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I feel like that's also sort of meta of like, what does a prisoner ultimately mean? Like, You know, maybe it just means whatever it is on screen. There is like a bit of I don't know, sarcasm, criticism here of like the idea of art criticism is like this exploration of the artist's mind rather than the art itself, since they since they don't understand the piece, and instead of using their own, you know, mind and knowledge of symbolism and such, they're like, so what does it mean?
There's also an element of them not understanding what it means because maybe they've never tried to escape, so they don't understand what it is to like want to escape.
Yeah. Anyway, like you said, number 6 wins, and he uses the money to buy the piece that he thought should have won, number 38's tapestry of number 2.
Yeah, which he says he's going to hang in his very own home.
Which he probably does, he's probably not lying. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here. You know, this episode, there's a couple more weeks, I feel like, until they escape, right? Or at least a few days. So maybe he hangs it up.
The way the episode is cut is it makes it seem like that night, that exact night, number 6 is like, okay, I'm escaping. Now that I have the tapestry, let's go.
Yeah, because we see them, like, we see number 6 and number 8, like, sneaking out of the art building, holding the pieces of the boat. And they go to the beach and they construct the boat and they use the tapestries as a sail and they set sail.
On the high seas, there's we also see a shot of a penny farthing flag flying above, I guess, the Green Dome.
Mm-hmm. And another thing we see here is the supervisor. That's the bald guy with the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Is called the supervisor, and he seems to know what they're doing. But he doesn't really play a big role in this episode.
He's number, like, 66 or something, or I don't know.
I don't remember his number, yeah. But
they're okay, it's I noticed this, and I'm curious to know if it's going to play into it, but some of the people in the observation room, the color scheme of their number badges is inverted. So their number badges are black with white lettering. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, so the normal ones are white with red lettering.
Yeah, so there are some in the control room that are black with, I think it was white lettering.
Huh? Yeah, I don't know what that signifies. They obviously, or not obviously, but like, I guess it's obvious that they're like on a higher rung than most of the other prisoners, even though they are ostensibly prisoners themselves since they have the badges.
Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, so they set sail, and they are attacked by Rover, who gets shot by some guy just on a beach. And like, if I was number 6, I'd be immediately suspicious that this guy was waiting for them on the beach, because like, how would he know?
Well, didn't Nadia mention that she has like a contact waiting on a beach nearby? Because they're like a few miles off the coast of like Poland or whatever it was.
Oh, well, yeah, because the Polish border is like just to the west of Lithuania.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I don't like know exactly where Lithuania is on a map.
So do you know where like Switzerland is? Part of that. Do you know where?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go basically directly south from Switzerland, you have Poland, and then slightly to the east of Poland is Lithuania.
I mean, I know the general area, so like, thanks, but you saying that doesn't really help. But like, I can't really picture all of this in my head. I'll have to look at an actual map or whatever. But,
when they show a big map like in the control room, and I was looking to see if they had like marked Lithuania on the map, but they didn't. They didn't like mark it as if like this is where we are, like, but they didn't do that. So.
Yeah, so they make it to this beach, and this guy, who obviously doesn't speak Russian, it's very obvious. Well, I read behind the scenes that like the guy who played this guy didn't know that Nadia Gray, who plays Nadia, actually spoke fluent Russian, and he was like embarrassed about his shoddy Russian when he was like doing this scene with her. Number 6 gives him a slip of paper, which are some orders that he's supposed to send to London, and he asks for his watch.
Yeah, because apparently number 6's watch broke with the seawater.
Mm-hmm. They get in these crates, and the rest of the episode, or almost the rest, is them being shipped to London.
You make it sound like it's a lot of time, but it's actually only like 10 minutes left in the episode.
It's like 10 minutes, yeah. The most sort of romantic the prisoner ever gets is in these crates, which is not very. It's just, it's not very.
Yeah, number 6 is... Actually, it sometimes seems kind of annoyed that number 8 is waking him up from his beauty sleep, I guess.
Yeah. But throughout all of this, we are getting shots of like them on trains and them being loaded onto boats and such. And number 6 actually asked for the watch to keep track of the time. Because at this point, he reveals later on that he himself was suspicious about all of this, so he wanted to make sure it took the amount of time that he thought it would to get from Lithuania to London, which was like 12 hours or something like that. Man, every time I hear something like this, I just go like, man, Europe, like, it must be so weird to like live in Europe, especially like the EU countries where you can just like hop on a train and in 2 hours you're in another country.
I think that would be cool.
It would be cool. Like here, you can drive for 2 hours and you're not even in another state.
Yeah, like, it would take you like nearly 3 to 4 hours to make it to the like border with the next closest state to where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you live on the East Coast, I guess you can cross a state in like 30 minutes. Cross like New Jersey in 30 minutes.
Yeah, you can. You know what the map of Maryland looks like, right? That little thin portion. Like apparently you can walk that in 30 minutes.
Wow.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard that people have swam, whatever, I don't know what the verb is, between Morocco and Spain, the Strait of Gibraltar.
I believe it. I mean, people have swum the English Channel, so...
Yeah. But doesn't that take, like, training?
Yes. Yes. It's not like you or I could just go out, like, right now and be like, okay, I'm going to swim the English Channel.
Anyway, they get to London, and it turns out that the order number 6 gave to the guy was that they shouldn't open the crates until they're in the office of, like, this guy who number 6 used to work with.
Fotheringay.
Yeah, Fotheringay and the Colonel. So as soon as number 6 gets out of the box, Nadia is, like, pulled off to probably be by Fotheringay and some random guy called the General. And number 6 wants to guarantee her safety, but they're also... So the guy left, the Colonel J, a.k.a. Kevin Stoney, a.k.a. Tobias Vaughn, a.k.a. Mavic Chen from Doctor Who, starts questioning him. He's very suspicious. He wonders why number 6 resigned and then disappeared for months and went to Lithuania, which is way closer to Russia than England is.
Yeah.
And number 6 tells him, like, well, I was brought to this place called the Village. I have no idea where it is. Well, other than it's in Lithuania. No idea
Allegedly.
who runs it. No idea exactly how long I was there. But I was there. And Kevin Stoney is like, yeah, I don't believe that whatsoever.
So he asks number 6 why he resigned, and number 6 starts. He's like, oh, it was a matter of conscience, many years ago. And then he hears the chimes of Big Ben chiming out 8 a.m. And he looks at his watch and he's like, that's weird. Why does this watch say 8 a.m.? Because I took this watch off of the agent we met in Poland or in Lithuania, wherever the hell the freaking cave was that they got boxed up in. And he's like, so that must mean... And then he like finds a switch that turns off the like sound of the train outside. And he's like, huh.
Yeah, and he opens a closet and it's just a recording of like the train and the cars and such.
Yeah, so here's where I was like, man, number 6 makes a really big jump with the watch. Like I said, there are a lot of other explanations for this watch. Like maybe the guy knew he was going to London, so he preemptively set it to London time. Like maybe he was working with the British government, which he kind of had to be if he's shipping them to London. And so he was waiting for communications from the British government, so he set it to London time, so he knew what time it would be there. Like then,
Yeah, well, this actually hints, before we explain the ending, this reveals, and again, this is another case for, like, this episode shouldn't be second. It should be, like, a little bit later on at least. So this reveals that, like, this is an international, like, allegiance of, because these are people that Number 6 knows and that he worked with as a secret agent. And he probably was a secret agent. I know we joke about, like, it never actually says it, but, like, yeah, he pretty much probably was.
he's a barber. He's a barber.
But, like, these are people he knows and has worked with and are part of, like, the intelligence community. But they're in on the village. Like, they're part of this.
Yeah, but we kind of got that with episode 1 with Cobb, so it's not like we've learned necessarily any new players in the game.
I guess, but I feel like Cobb was lower on the ladder. Like, he was kind of on the same level as Number 6. And not maybe not necessarily running the show.
I mean, maybe same level as Number 6 in the old agency, but at the end of the episode, for the end of Arrival, kind of made it seem like he was a much bigger player than he was pretending to be, kind of like a Nadia-esque character.
He reports to his new masters. But even still, the guy in Poland or wherever the heck that was that they landed, like, he's in on it too. Like, this is a fully international community, and that harks back to what Number 6 said earlier, is like, this is an international allegiance, but their goals are the same as nationalism, is I think what he's getting at when he talks with Number 2, which is, like, weird to think about, and maybe something we should dive into more as we continue to watch the show.
Right, maybe.
But anyway, what happens is Number 2... God, I always do that. So what happens is Number 6... And I love the acting. I love the performance that Patrick McGoohan gives here. He's great at making, like, Number 6 have this very grave look. He sort of just... He stalks out, or, like, I don't know. He leaves the building, and lo and behold, he's in the village.
He just starts saying, "Be seeing you, be seeing you." To people.
This is where I think he starts really to fall into line. And if I remember correctly, maybe this chronologically is where he starts wearing the number, because I think this is where he realizes, like, that there's no escape, and that he's severely underestimated the people in charge. He walks out into the village, and, like, Ashton Kutcher jumps out, like, you just got pranked, or whatever.
You just got pranked, bro.
Yeah, and he sees that Nadia is standing side by side with Number 2. She was in on the plan the whole time.
Yep.
Man. Kind of exactly like what happened last week with both Cobb and Number 9.
9. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about something here. I guess at the beginning you mentioned that the writer of this went on to become a psychotherapist, which is very interesting, because what I was going to say is, I don't know if you've seen Shutter Island. What I'm about to say is going to... Yeah, so this is going to spoil the ending of Shutter Island for anyone who hasn't seen it and cares, but at the end of Shutter Island, it's revealed that Leo DiCaprio's character is actually not a U.S. Marshal. He's a patient there, and they constructed this whole fantasy where they allowed him to be an agent to investigate the whole thing, because they thought that they would be able to break him and finally get through to the trauma he had been suppressing by allowing him to live in this fantasy world, basically. And while watching this episode, when the resolution came, I just got, like, heavy Shutter Island vibes. I was like, wow. They basically just constructed this fantasy world, allowed him to live in it because they thought it would break him, and it very nearly, like, succeeded in doing so. And I thought the parallels between the two are very interesting, because Shutter Island is a book first that was written in 2003 or published in 2003, and a movie in 2010. So, like, maybe there is... I mean, I don't think there's, like, some reference or inspiration there, but the possibility is there.
Yeah, I almost think the Prisoner kind of does that in like a meta sense of like, there's a line that's actually the line in this episode of like, you know, you've constructed this like idyllic vision of the future, and this is what it's all leading to. Maybe like the fact that this is depicted on TV is what this is all leading to. You know, some sort of, because I don't know, this is like a simulated environment, I guess, right? And
Yeah.
the show is as well, like every show is to some extent as well, like a simulation. So multiple layers of simulation there, I guess.
Simulacra.
I know, yeah. I never mind. I'm not going to say what I was about to say.
But that's kind of like the main thing I wanted to talk about was this very interesting, the parallels and similarities between the two. And this is like the most downbeat ending of like a show we've watched in a long time, excluding the end of Sapphire and Steel, because that was just woof.
Well, and Children of the Stones as well.
Also true. Well, I mean, they escape at the end, so...
But everyone else doesn't.
Yeah, well, whether or not they were even, like, humans with free will to begin with is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Like, maybe they're just projections of the time loop.
I have no idea.
And that maybe that, like, that village is just always a prison for the two guys who come in and then escape at the end.
It beats the heck out of me. Anyway, this is a really good episode.
Yeah.
Agreed. I described earlier how I think this one is kind of Kafkaesque. I think a lot of episodes going forward will be. Kafkaesque is one of those weird like terms that doesn't really mean anything other than that it's kind of that like if something's Kafkaesque, it's like Kafka's writing, which has a very distinct like vibe to it. Kafka's one of his best stories. I've only read a couple of his stories and a couple of his journals entries, but I think one of his best stories is The Trial, which is kind of, now that I say that, The Trial is kind of like The Prisoner in that like it kind of jumps around, not in the way, not because it's not chronological, but because it was never finished, and a big port like he wrote a lot of it and then he just wrote the ending and he never finished the gap between like where he stopped in the ending. So the only version that you can read of it has like this massive jump, but in a way that kind of fits the story. But anyway, The Trial, there's a scene like that's kind of like this in The Trial where like the main character Joseph K like wanders around an apartment building for like a super long time looking for a very specific place that should be very distinct, and like as soon as he's like is not looking for it, he finds himself like there, like he doesn't even find it, he's just like already there. I don't know, I kind of get that vibe from like number 6. They go on this huge journey, this 12-hour journey from Lithuania to London, and he walks out the door and he's back where he started.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's really like a 6-hour back journey, because they just bring him back to the village and then just jostle the box around to make it feel like he's landing in an airplane.
Yeah, and it begs a question, like, how long does the village extend? Like, there's obviously a border because there's portions where if you go past, you know, that portion, Rover is going to come and get you, but like, is that little beach where they found the guy and got in the boxes, is that part of the village? You know, I don't know.
There seems to kind of be an implication that while it may not be directly a part of the village, they have influence over it because the control center says that it's beyond their like visual tracking range, but they have radar and it's like right at the edge of their radar. And then number 2 says, well, then you better contact like lookout post number 5 or something, like outpost number 5 to like take over. So
anyway, yeah, if that's all you had, we can jump into the Britain's 10 actors segment. Yeah. Always a fun segment.
Yeah.
So did you? I looked up ones this time. Did you?
I've got 6 of them.
All right. Well, let's just.
I don't know how many you did.
Yeah, I have 6.
Okay, probably the same 6 then.
Yeah, which I think this is a good time to mention since we keep saying 6. Like every time I go get a haircut and ask for a number 6. Like, ever since I first watched this show, like, I've always thought about number 6 when doing that.
Number 6, please. Who is number 6?
Oh my God.
Anyway, so the first actor I have is Leo McKern, who plays number 2 this week. I read an unsourced comment that I think he's one of the people who plays number 2 in more than one episode. So I don't know if this is this episode or a later one, but apparently at some point during the filming, the stress of filming the part of number 2 was so intense he had either a nervous breakdown or a heart attack, depending on what source you follow.
Wow, yeah, I had no idea about that.
But I have him in ITV Playhouse, Space 1999, the Play of the Week, and then the 1960s Robin Hood series that I think was the one Patrick Troughton was in.
I don't think it's that one. Patrick Troughton was in one from the 50s, which was a whatchamacallit, like a teleplay thing that was live.
Right. Well, he was in a Robin Hood series of some sort as someone.
Yeah. I have him as being in something called The Magical World of Disney, which is interesting because, for 2 reasons. One, a lot of other actors in this episode were in The Magical World of Disney. And Patrick McGoohan was not in The Magical World of Disney, but he was in something else that was similar to The Magical World of Disney, which is, I believe, not an anthology show, but just a show about what Disney is doing now, type thing. Or
what's next from Disney?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll if that's wrong, I'll put what is right in the show notes. But Patrick McGoohan had been very involved with Disney throughout his entire career, which again is very strange to me.
Yeah, that's odd to me. It's really weird to me.
Anyway, I also have him as playing Moriarty in The Adventure of Sherlock. Something called The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother.
I saw that. It was once.
I remember back when I first watched this show, I watched the old uploads of it on YouTube that have since been taken down. And someone claiming to be Leo McKern's daughter commented on one of the episodes about how her dad loved the show and just some more comments from her dad. I don't know if it's real.
Unsourced comments.
But maybe.
Maybe.
Anyway, I have Nadia Gray as playing Nadia.
Yeah, Nadia Rakovsky, apparently.
Yeah. Or Nakovsky? I don't know. / number 8. She was actually Romanian. And her IMDb lists her as being in a ton of French movies and almost no English things. And this is actually her last role according to IMDb. This is the last thing she was ever in.
Yeah, I noticed that too and thought that was suspicious given how, number 9, the femme fatale of last week, this was, the second to last performance of hers. So I was like,
Yeah, I looked up when she died because I was like, man, did she, die soon after this too? But according to Wikipedia, she died in 1990.
Yeah, her IMDb page says that she died, much later, but she retired from acting in the early 70s because I think... Oh, I might be misremembering, but I think her husband died and she had to take care of her kids.
Huh.
But that was involved in the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Next I have Finlay Curry as the general.
Yeah.
He's in the 1959 Ben-Hur movie. He was in Danger Man. He was in The Saint. And I have him in ITV Play of the Week as well. Not much super interesting there.
Yeah, this was also one of his last roles I saw.
Yeah.
So Colonel J / the Colonel is played by Kevin Stoney, who...
Kevin Stoney.
We know as playing Tobias Vaughn / Mavic Chen in Doctor Who. And apparently he also plays a character called Tyrum in Revenge of the Cybermen. I don't know or remember who that is, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, he's also in Softly Softly. He was in Avengers. He was also in The Magical World of Disney. He was in Space 1999, Z Cars, and Bergerac.
I also have him in Emmerdale, The Bill, and Blake 7.
Oh, really? He was in I forgot.
I didn't write down what
Blake 7.
episode, but he's credited as being in Blake 7.
I completely forgot. I'm sure we probably noticed that when we watched Blake 7.
Yeah, because it's Kevin Stoney.
I don't remember what he played in there, though.
Richard Wattis as Fortingay. Fotheringay. The way it's spelled makes me think it's pronounced Fortingay, but it's Fotheringay. In a movie called The Man Who Knew Too Much, which I've heard of, but I have no idea what it's about. He was in The Goodies, which is another show from this time. Danger Man as well. I mean, he's apparently uncredited in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which I wrote down because Ian Fleming wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, so that's kind of a weird connection there.
Yeah, and I just also had him as being in the magical world of Disney.
Heck yeah.
This is my last one. I have Hilda Berry. She played number 38. She was in The Railway Children, both of them, both versions of it. She was in Quatermass 2. And she was in Z-Cars and like a ton of other things I didn't recognize.
Yeah, my last one is actually number 2's assistant, who's played by none other than Christopher Benjamin, which might be a name you don't recognize at first until you realize he played Jago in The Talons of Wang Chiang.
Wow. Huh.
He also played Colonel Hugh in Unicorn and the Wasp, and he was in The Saint, The Avengers, Z-Cars, and I also have him in the 2016 Legend of Tarzan movie. He actually passed away earlier this year, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So,
speaking of this year, a lot of the blogs I found referencing information from this / rewatching and blogging about The Prisoner are from like 2019, 2020, which I found very odd.
I noticed that too.
Like, maybe that's just Google pushing those to the first few pages, but I don't know. I find
maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if...
Or maybe the society we live in is giving people pause to think about The Prisoner. Well, I'm out of actors, so should we do who could be number 1 this week?
I have some quotes. I don't think we've really solidified an order for how we do all of these things, but why don't we go ahead and do the quotes first, because I think that's how we did it last week. So I had the one from when number 2 and number 6 are sitting at that little table and at the beach, and they're discussing like the nature of the village. Number 2 goes, when the sides facing each other realize that they're looking into a mirror, they will realize that this is the pattern of the future.
Right.
And he's describing the village when he says that. So something that this show is kind of getting at early on here is that like both sides here in the Cold War, the East and the West, are really after the same thing, and perhaps even their means are much more similar than they think.
Yeah.
And there's
that's a common theme in the things of this era, that the two sides might not actually be that different. I mean, it was a common way to criticize your own government, but to say it's not as not as different to the enemy as you might think.
Right. And that's what number 2 actually, God, I keep doing that. That's what number 6, he kind of throws a little fit about that when he goes back to what he thinks is London, and he realizes that nobody believes him about the village, and he starts yelling about how he thought England was different and that they wouldn't support something like this.
Yep. Turns out he was wrong.
Yep.
Oh boy. I don't have any quotes for this episode, so unfortunately.
Not even "I'm not a number, I'm a free man," the most famous quote from the show.
Well, did that even appear in this episode?
Yeah, it's in the intro. It's in the extended portion of the intro, so this is technically,
that's right.
If you're watching in broadcast order, this is technically the first time you hear it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's probably the most famous quote from this show.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've heard it outside this context.
Yeah, now I guess we can jump into our Who's Number 1 segment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this week it's number 2. I think number 2 is number 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because he almost succeeds.
Yeah. He almost succeeds. He seems to be a lot more knowledgeable about the inner workings of the village and number 6's mind than like the previous 2 number 2s and basically anyone on the show we've seen so far. He does not seem to be reprimanded or punished in any way for the plan failing, which to me seems to indicate that maybe he's got more power than perhaps other number twos that we've seen so far. And also, interestingly, number 6 refers to number 2, well, specifically this number 2, I guess, as chairman of the village, when he's explaining who number 2 is to Colonel J. Which chairman would seem to imply he's the man in charge.
Yeah, I guess.
Just saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't seem to be the case, because again, this number 2 is way more personable and kind of friendly, actually. At least more so than the other 2 that we've seen so far. But yeah, he does seem to have a better grasp of things, and maybe that's why number 6 kind of lets his guard down around this.
He's
number
also
2.
the only one so far who's modifying number 6's file as he goes to include new information, which we didn't see the other two number 2s do.
Well, if I had to pick a person who would be in charge here, I'm convinced now. I would say number 2, but going into this, I don't know. I probably would have said something like the supervisor, because he seems to just be off.
The bald man?
Yeah, well, because he seems to just be detached from everything else. Yeah, he's running the orange alert thing, but he doesn't seem to be connected to the power structure that number 2 has put in place. We don't know his status in relation to number 2, and he's definitely in a superior position in the surveillance room, which would give him enough information to be number 1, I think.
Yeah, that's a convincing argument for this bald man. Yeah, no. Very interesting. Somehow I feel like half these characters will just not even appear ever again, and that will be the theme forever.
Well, we'll have to see.
But I mean, other than that, I don't have anything else to say about the Chimes of Big Bill.
Yeah, neither do I.
Well, if you would like to reach us, you can email us at thedoctor@decorativvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Chimes of Big Ben. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be, once again, joined by a longtime listener and friend of the show, Keith, as we watch A, B, and C. But until then, the end.